Hello YouTube. Nature is full of mysteries and riddles, and some of them still do not cease to amaze humanity, despite the fact that many phenomena are no longer a secret for scientists, but people still wonder, why is this happening? So I'm going to tell you about a very interesting phenomenon that's actually taking place right now. But I do want to mention that in Russian, хоровод, that's an East Slavic and pagan art form and one of the oldest dances of Russia, which has more than 1,000 years history. And of course, in Ukraine, in Belarus and Poland, they also know what it is. It is a combination of a circle dance and chorus singing, but I don't think there'll be much singing in this video. Now, do you know why the deer conduct this хоровод, or the circling dance, or round dance, or circle dance? We can use either term. Very often these even-toed ungulates, hoofed animals, get together in herds and start circling in one place. From the air, such a phenomenon looks fascinating. The running of many deer in a circle, which looks unusually smooth from above, it hypnotizes people. Why do deer make such an unusual shape of dance, if you can call it that? Let's figure it out. Despite the fact that deer have been living side by side with humans for many years, it has not been possible to fully tame this animal. Wild blood is still bubbling in this even-toed hoofed animals, which reminds them that at any moment they need to quickly break into a run or group up and protect weak individuals, the old, the sick, as well as females and cubs. This phenomenon is typical not only for deer. In the wild, it is not uncommon for even-toed ungulates to line up in a circle, as if they were buffaloes, cows, or even elephants. When a threat arises, they huddle together, leaving behind those who need to be protected. True, these mammals do not always lead around the circle dances, but strong individuals stand in a row or in a circle, turning horns or sharp tusks towards the enemy. In this case, predators have minimal chances for a successful attack. For example, if a hungry lion dares to hunt a baby elephant in the savannah, then it has a small chance of eating prey, but the fact that its ribs will be broken is very possible, since several pairs of strong tusks will be turned in its direction at once. Deer also have a natural instinct for protection. Young, old, or injured individuals, as well as pregnant females, attract predators, for example bears or wolves. Such hoofed, even-toed animals cannot defend themselves on their own, so the deer simply flock together and begin to circle around the weak relatives. For a predator, such a wall is almost insurmountable. Therefore, the chances that a hungry beast will abandon attempts to attack are significantly increased. Each deer protects the back of a running relative ahead, and at the same time creates an obstacle for those who want to eat weaker individuals, although the probability that the predator will attack still remains. So this is like an instinctive form of protection. Deer is a herd animal. It mainly lives in the tundra, where deer are hunted, for example, by wolves. Thus the animal is protected from them. Millions of years of evolution have done their job. It is already now that a person uses a fence to protect deer from predators. However, fencing doesn't mean anything to deer. According to the expert, the Russian zoologist Andrei Podluzhnov, not only deer but also any other hoofed wild animals line up in a circle. For example, cows, bisons. The circle has a clear structure. In the center, there are cubs and females. In a circle, there are males who protect their herd. If bulls and cows stand motionless in a circle because they are slow and rely on the blow of their horns, then the deer are fast animals, so they circle. Everyone covers the back of the one in front. In addition, in summer, reindeer are also saved this way from insects. Periodically, the deer change places, and those who were inside turned out to be on the outside. It is a mistake to think that deer can circle like this exclusively in the wild. In fact, very often these hoofed animals start this round dance, even in pens. Perhaps they don't have much hope for the man-made fences. It is in our eyes that the deer in the pens are safe. It is possible that even being surrounded by a strong fence, hoofed animals continue to feel fear and they do not feel peace. By the way, deer can just dance around because of their agility and activity. The same cows use a similar principle when there is a threat, but they are not as fast, so they rely on the blow of the horns. Deer have a more active nature of character. Despite the fact that this phenomenon is not at all new to nature, and there are many documentaries on such topics, people still continue to ask questions. For what purpose? Some of the assumptions excite the imagination so much that they quickly take root on the web, on the internet, and become almost a reliable fact. For example, there are comments to videos about circling deer stating that the animals are dancing around for the sole purpose of keeping warm. However, knowing that the undercoat of these hoofed, even-toed animals contains fluff, such a hypothesis can be easily discarded. In addition, deer skin has excellent thermal protection properties. It consists of thick, hollow hairs. The dense undercoat prevents the movement of air inside the fur itself. Therefore, deer are able to keep warm and even sleep in the snow. No wonder the tundra Nenets people, like any other indigenous peoples of the north, use deer fur for sewing clothes. In a harsh climate, such things serve not only for a long time, but also help to survive the most difficult weather conditions. There are also those who believe that deer certainly help the earth to spin. But in this case, it remains only to shake your head. Even arguments confirming the absurdity of such hypothesis will not be found. By the way, in the rituals of nomads, circling is of interest not only as a behavioral effect, but also as a method of physical and mental coverage of space. Quite often, a circle or oval, which deer form when moving, is associated with nomadic dynamics and is in opposition to the static of a square in sedentary cultures. Even concepts such as samsara or mandala denote movement, life. Often, when trying to depict them, artists resort to the shape of a circle. Man, like many animals, is acutely aware of his environment and himself in it. In a rough interpretation, it can be assumed that a person, on the one hand, seems to experience tides of courage and energy when surrounding opponents, and on the other hand, he feels devastation and fear being surrounded. Many researchers also believe that the circle itself does not have any set properties, but if movement begins in it, then something extraordinary happens. Especially if the mass is circling the herd, then it seems that the space is being mastered. Remember, the designation of infinity or time, images of a wheel or the shape of 8 are very often used, and movement is subconsciously added. Among nomadic Nenets people, for example, many maneuvers during the nomadic reindeer herding or grazing of deer are also performed in a circular pattern. For example, a nomad can unfold into a ribbon in motion, and in the camp it can collapse into a kind of ring or half ring. According to the researchers, any actions to graze a deer herd, stop movement, arrange a camp, or complete a rite have the form of rounding. In general, the circle in the life of the ungulates has its own special meaning. Even the chum, their dwelling, at the base is round, and some rituals are also held in a circle. For example, during a wedding, the caravan first goes around the bride's father's chum, and then 3 times around the groom's chum. Even dancing sometimes contains movement in a circle. This is quite a departure to the roots, history, and customs. Thus, it is not difficult to guess that the deer's blood also has its own customs that came with experience. Of course, it is considered that round dances are found to protect weak individuals. This is the most common theory, but if not a fact in scientific circles. But there is always a place for a riddle in life, so you can never be sure even about what you seem to know 100%, and I'll show you why. A new hypothesis exists, claiming to be more accurate. This is from Usik Markasyan, an Armenian Russian and a very keen observer. Deer dance in the pants. This is their protective reaction from the people, from human beings themselves. Circling because they are afraid of people. Deer have acquired such protection since the time when men began to engage in reindeer husbandry. Such acquisitions are the fruits of their evolution. The fact proves that deer also do not stand in the process of their development. They continue to evolve. To understand what leads to this and why deer are suddenly afraid of people, it is necessary to consider the relationship between people and these animals from a different perspective. And so, man domesticating deer had one single purpose: to eat it, if not immediately then later, and use its skin for his or her eating purposes. The deer, despite the seemingly affectionate attitude of human beings toward them, realized that people are not saving them for affection at all. After many years of close communication, the deer were convinced that people are more dangerous than any pack of wolves, because if they can run away from wolves, then there is no salvation from a human being. And if wolves attacking them can catch the sick and old piece by piece, then people can half the herd from sick to healthy, put them under the knife, which really corresponds to the purpose of reindeer husbandry. Reindeer herders graze deer for the whole year, constantly driving them from one pasture to another, protecting them from predators in order to drive them into pens for slaughter in the fall. And the slaughter of deer is an annual process in reindeer husbandry, for which there is an incentive for people to engage in their maintenance and multiplication. By the way, if earlier reindeer sleds were used to fit deer into corrals, now they use snowmobiles. At the same time, even every year it is difficult to drive deer into pens, and this is a fact for further reflection, by the way. Paddocks all over the world are fences separated by chambers for different purposes. In the pens, deer are slaughtered, counted, marked, horns are cut down, vaccinated, and transferred from one herd to another. Fences in the human environment are like protection from neighbors, thieves, and enemies. But in reindeer herding farms, fences are used to ensure that deer do not run away from people to freedom. They are for deer like prisons, walls are for people. And if the relationship between men and deer in pastures is tolerable for deer, then this cannot be said when the herd is driven into pens for slaughter. And so, one of the chambers in the pens can be safely called a hellish chamber for deer. Hellish animal tortures are carried out in that chamber. Even for a wide range of outsiders, it seems there is some kind of a collective shamanism with the participation of a dozen people with incomprehensible violent actions. And if reindeer herders know what they're doing and for what, then you can imagine how animals do not understand the fear of what is happening. These people think that it's nothing. They vaccinate the animal so that it doesn't get sick. They brand the animal so as not to lose it. They cut off the horns. Everything will grow exactly new. Well, according to Markasyan, the deer do not take these procedures very calmly. To catch a deer and cut down the horns is equivalent to catching a young guy on the street, pulling out his teeth and letting go. After this main chamber, the processed deer, which were lucky not to become meat this time, they are not released, since they will scatter all over the tundra, etc. Therefore, they are kept in a large chamber for a certain time until they calm down. And as the next portion is released to freedom, the deer, in a panic state, immediately hide in a round dens, running away from people. Of course, when we say freedom, this is so-called irony. However, deer cannot get far from people because of the fence. The only salvation is to get lost in the environment of deer and the instinct to defend oneself in the cycle of the masses. Each portion of deer coming from the torture chamber becomes a source of concern for the herd and an additional impetus for the continuation of the cycle, of the circle. This is that is, while there is a torture or some kind of influence on them inside the chambers and outside, the deer, sensing danger from the human beings, continue to spin, to circle. Therefore, the herd comes down later, only after the effects on them stop. If the area of the fence allows, then the deer circle away from people in the corner as far as possible. In the slaughter chambers, if the herd is not disturbed by a human being, they can just stand like in a bunch. And even at the beginning of the work, because of the small number of deer, they do not spin. They begin to circle when there are plenty of deer in the chamber. Each individual deer trying to get away from people becomes a member of the circle. In this enclosed space, each of them tries to stay away from human beings, and this is the center of the circle. But the space in the center is limited. Which of the deer gets there to the center and by what criteria still needs to be studied. The fact that weak, old, or strong deer are hiding in the center doesn't follow from the observation. The deer that have already calmed down, those that have passed the hellish test earlier, stand quietly outside the circle. That's the formula of the reindeer dance. If this is formulated, it will depend on the following parameters: the size of the fences, the number of deer, the source and duration of anxiety, the environment, the professionalism of reindeer herders. Undoubtedly, in addition to these hellish trials, animals are also impacted or affected by the understanding of what happens to relatives when their carcasses hang everywhere after certain actions of people. When they say that animals do not feel the death of their relatives, this is not true at all. It's just that animals have nowhere to go. They are accustomed to being in a herd that is guarded by a human being. As a result, after each time of the trials experienced and being subjected to human onslaught in the pens while communicating with people, the deer formed a cumulative fear, and based on the instinct, they developed a tactic of circular protection for themselves from a more terrible beast, the human beings. That's the hypothesis. And now on to China. Social media users are closely and anxiously following the events that are unfolding in China. more specifically in Inner Mongolia. Local sheep formed a perfect circle and started this round dance. They now walk around the circle day and night without a break. They don't even get distracted by food. Amazing sense of purpose. Some kind of mysticism. According to the Chinese media, the circular marathon started on November 4, 2022 and has not finished as of November 23rd. I don't know what will be in the next days. This is today. In Inner Mongolia, dozens of sheep were found walking in a circle, and media outlets have been reporting that the animals did so for 12 days straight, with no details as to how the sheep were eating, drinking, or relieving themselves during that time. And for all we know today, they're still going in their Chinese хоровод. So this sheep or ram circulation was filmed, and with gratitude to the Chinese media, this hit the internet and quickly spread around the world and went viral. The public who undertook to discuss the strange footage has been divided into two camps. Some are scared and consider this round dance a sign of something terrible to come, because it makes a depressing impression, as if the animals had come under someone's persistent attention or have become bewitched. Or for some reason the sheep were irradiated by aliens, those who draw circles in the fields, the crop circles. In addition, fans from around the globe report that they observe similar oddities in their surroundings. Since November 16, relevant reports have been received from several other countries, for example from England, Australia, and even from Russia, where it is true that not flocks of sheep were doing the хоровод, but the reindeer. Other sympathizers are simply interested. They say, what is it that they, the sheep or the rams, have in mind? The veterinarians who join them are looking for natural causes of strange behavior of animals. Zoologists, far from mysticism, suggest that the sheep have become infected. Parasites such as worm larvae have made their way into the brains of the animals. As a rule, larvae, in Russian we call them овечьи мозговики, penetrate into one part of the brain, right or left. It depends on which way the dance will spin. The Chinese sheep are circling clockwise, which means that the larvae have penetrated into the right hemisphere. Are the sheep suffering from the circling disease? This disease is caused by soil bacteria that can infect one side of an animal's brain, causing it to lean toward the affected side. Yet usually in an outbreak of this circling disease, only a few % of sheep are impacted, and actually they tend to follow their own circling pattern, dying after just a few days. Well, that's not the case here. Farmers reject the parasitic account or explanation, emphasizing that the infected sheep would have died long ago. They would not have lasted a week. In addition, it does not happen that the larvae cling to all the sheep of the herd. Some people on the internet suggested that sheep were entering a death spiral like ants sometimes do. I have to make a video about some of the very unusual ants for you. That I've been studying for years as well. Anyway, some people see psychosis in what is happening. It is indeed sometimes found in agricultural practice. Several animals are literally going crazy, unable to withstand being kept in captivity. Once in a larger paddock or in a field, they begin to walk in a circle. Gradually, others from the herd join them, obeying the herd instinct. So, for example, it happened in China. Day by day, there are more adherents to the circle dance. But why does this round dance does not stop for so long, almost a month? Why doesn't its diameter change? And how do sheep choose the diameter of the circle they walk on? There are no clear answers. The riddle is not solved. And by the way, the mystery of the crop circles has not been completely clarified either. But that's a completely different story. So if you like my research, please support me to the links you'll find in the description to this video, and I'll bring you more interesting stories, some paranormal, some close to it, from Eurasia and other parts of the world. Thank you. I appreciate your attention to my work.